Hello and welcome. In this explainer, we are diving deep into a really powerful idea called radical responsibility. We're going to explore how you can master your mindset, finally reclaim your focus from all that distraction, and start creating the reality you actually want to be living in. So if you're ready to trade that feeling of being distracted for a life of intention, let's jump right in. So let me ask you this. Does this feel familiar? You sit down, you're ready to get something important done, and then 5 minutes later, somehow you're just scrolling through your phone. Or maybe you keep finding yourself in the exact same frustrating arguments, feeling like life is just happening to you. It's that feeling of being caught, right? Of spinning your wheels but just not getting anywhere.
Well, here's the thing. The sources we're breaking down today, they argue that feeling, it's not your fault. Our modern world is practically engineered to be a trap for our attention and our energy. But, and this is the important part, those very same sources give us a clear, actionable map to find our way out of it.
So where do we start? Well, before you can escape any trap, you first have to understand how it was built in the first place. And that brings us to our diagnosis. We're basically living in the age of reaction.
This is such a crucial point from computer scientist Dr. Cal Newport. The problem isn't the internet as a whole, it's not even our phones really. The problem is that so many of the apps and services we use are specifically and very, very expensively engineered to make us react. Their whole goal is to pull our attention away from what we intend to do and bring it right back to their platforms.
So how exactly is this trap engineered? Honestly, it's a full-on assault on our focus. First up, you've got those bright red notification icons. Those colors are no accident. They're chosen specifically to hijack our brain's ancient alert systems. Then you've got the infinite scroll, the pull to refresh. These things create dopamine loops that get us hooked on the anticipation of what might come next. It's just a constant fire hose of stimuli. And here's the real kicker. Every single time we give in, our brain pays a massive price. It's something called a network switching cost. Think of it this way. See, you're cooking a really complex meal and someone keeps interrupting you to ask you a random math problem. You don't just lose the time it takes to solve the problem. You lose all that time trying to find your place in the recipe again, remembering what you just did. It's a huge mental cost. And that's exactly what's happening to our focus every single time we switch tasks.
So, when you're faced with this kind of engineered environment, we all have a fundamental choice to make. And it's a choice in our mindset, a decision that shapes everything that comes after it. Do we see ourselves as a victim of all these circumstances, or as the creator of our own response?
And just look at how clearly this slide lays out the two paths. It's so stark. The victim mindset is always asking, why me? It completely hands over all its power to external forces. Your boss, the algorithm, your past. And that path, it almost always leads down a vortex of negativity. But the creator mindset, that starts from a place of power. It gets that you don't control everything in life, but you do control your response. It empowers you to live by intention, to focus your precious energy on the one thing you can always influence, your own choices. And here's the psychological twist. The victim mindset isn't just, a bad attitude. It actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If your core belief is something like, I'm not good enough or I always mess things up, your brain, without you even realizing it, turns into this biased detective. It starts selectively looking for any piece of evidence it can find to prove those negative beliefs are true. It's a trap our very own mind sets for us.
Okay, so how do we break free from that kind of mental trap? We need a practical tool. So let's look at a really brilliant framework for spotting and escaping these negative patterns, especially when they pop up in our relationships with other people.
Okay, let's break this down. This is the drama triangle, and it was developed by psychologist Stephen Karpman. And it is a surprisingly simple map of the toxic roles we tend to fall into during conflict. And I'm telling you, once you see this, you start seeing it everywhere.
So you've got three main roles here. The persecutor is the finger pointer, the one saying, it's all your fault. The victim feels helpless and powerless, thinking, poor me. And then you've got the rescuer, who swoops in to save the day. But here is the insight that makes this triangle so powerful. These roles are completely codependent. You can't be a rescuer, for instance, without implicitly defining someone else as a powerless victim. Your help might actually be keeping them from finding their own strength. We jump between these roles all the time, just spinning around in a cycle of blame and dependency.
So how do we get off this crazy merry-go-round? Well, author Fleet Mall offers this super clear 6-step exit plan. First, you just recognize it. That simple awareness is a giant leap forward. Second, when you feel that trigger, you stop. Don't act, don't speak, just pause. Third, take space. Walk away, take a few deep breaths, do whatever you got to do to shift your emotional state. Fourth, you own your feelings. So instead of saying, "You make me mad," you say, "I feel angry." That subtle shift brings all the power right back to you. And from there, you can identify what you really need underneath that feeling. And finally, you set a boundary when you need to. This entire sequence right here is your exit ramp off the drama highway.
All right, so we've got a tool for handling external drama. Now, let's turn inward and start building the toolkit for reclaiming our own mind and our own courage.
Our first tool for taking back control comes once again from Cal Newport. It's the practice of deep work, which is basically the ability to focus without distraction on a tough mental task. In our distracted world, this is a legit superpower.
But here's the most encouraging part, and what makes this whole thing feel so achievable. You don't need to do this for 12 hours a day. Even an expert like Dr. Newport says he's only really good for about 4, maybe 4.5 hours of truly deep, productive work a day. So the whole point is not about grinding for endless hours. It's about fiercely protecting just a few hours of high-quality, uninterrupted focus. It's all about quality over quantity. Now for tool number 2. This one is all about reclaiming our courage from anxiety and fear. It actually comes from clinical psychology, and it's called exposure therapy. And yeah, it might sound kind of intense, but the logic behind it is incredibly simple and really powerful. So this is the core engine of exposure therapy: desensitization. The whole idea is that you intentionally and safely stay with an anxious feeling without trying to escape it. So your brain's alarm system, your fight or flight response, is screaming that a catastrophe is coming. But when you just stay put, the catastrophe never arrives. By doing this over and over, you are actively retraining your brain. The anxiety response gets weaker and weaker until eventually the thing that once terrified you might actually just bore you. And just look at the story this data tells. SUDS here stands for Subjective Units of Distress. It's basically a 0 to 10 anxiety scale. On day 1, this person's anxiety spikes to a really painful 8 out of 10 while they're practicing. But just watch what happens with consistent practice. By day 7, the peak anxiety is only a 2, and it ends at a barely there 0.5. You are literally watching fear extinguish itself in real time. This is what data-driven courage actually looks like. So we have tools to manage distraction, drama, and fear. And all of this builds toward a single, unifying philosophy for living a much more powerful and intentional life. And that philosophy is called radical responsibility, a concept that was developed and articulated by Dr. Fleet Mall. And he actually developed these ideas while he was serving a 14-year prison sentence, a place where it would be incredibly easy to fall into a victim mindset. But instead, he chose a completely different path. So what is it, really? It's the choice to take 100% ownership, not for the circumstances you face, but for your response to them. And this is the most important distinction to make. This is not about self-blame. Blame is all about the past. Responsibility is about your power, right here, in the present moment. It is a radical, life-changing act of self-empowerment. This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? The world is going to throw things at us. We're going to face distractions and difficult people and our own fears. Those are the circumstances, but they do not have to define us. Our destiny, our reality, it's forged in that tiny space between what happens to us and how we respond. That is where all our power lies. And so that's the question this all leaves us with. Knowing that your real power is found in how you respond, what are you going to choose to create? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.